Okay, so my name is Jordan Petz. I'm doing my master's at Fort Hays right now, and I'm going to teach today over chapter 28. It's on your leading and managing text over self-management. So when we think about self-management, it's regulation of yourself. So this is really important for you guys when you enter the workforce and when thinking of being maybe in a leadership and management role. And so we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, what that means, the concepts that are involved in that, and then stress and time management. So emotional intelligence, there's some key concepts involved with that, and that's the capability to recognize not only your own emotions, but someone else's emotions as well. Then you're able to identify what those emotions are and understand what they are, and use them towards thinking and guided behavior. So you're taking emotions and you're using it towards like critical thinking and problem solving. And then managing and adjusting those emotions based on the environment or the situation that you're in. So maybe you recognize that you're feeling angry and maybe that's not appropriate for the situation, so you're going to alter that to better achieve the goal that you're wanting to achieve. Studies show that people that have high levels of emotional intelligence are happier at their jobs, they have better job performance, better mental health, and leadership abilities. And then in that little diagram over there, it talks about some of the key concepts involved in emotional intelligence, and we'll talk about those here. Perceiving emotions is just what it says that it is. That's really being able to look at someone else's body language, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, and understand what emotion they're feeling, and then understanding that about yourself too. And so this is the really basic level of emotional intelligence. You have to be able to do that in order to understand, manage, or use emotions. Using them is just the ability to, again, like I said, use it towards like critical thinking and problem solving. You're using it as a aid. And then understanding is you're able to understand that emotions are complicated and there's complicated relationships among emotions. And so just being able to be aware of that, especially as a leader or a manager with your staff. And then the ability to regulate them in yourselves and other people. So that's important, again, when thinking about being in leadership and management. So this diagram, I think, just depicts some of the benefits of having good emotional intelligence, especially in a leadership capacity. So you'll have increased leadership ability, increased team performance, improved decision making, decreased occupational stress on the job, reduce staff turnover because you as a manager are emotionally intelligent, and so therefore people are working well with you, you're working well with them, and then increased personal well-being, so that mental health that we talked about. And the good news is emotional intelligence is something that you can learn over time, and so it is a really crucial thing to leadership competency, like I said. And so those concepts are what we're going to talk about on this slide, and I kind of feel like these are kind of repetitive definitions of what we just talked about. So being self-aware, but this is not only noticing your own emotions, but your strengths, your weaknesses, what motivates you, what drives you, and being able to understand how that impacts those around you. And then self-regulation, basically like what it says, you're able to control your emotions, recognizing that maybe it's not an appropriate reaction for the situation that you're in. And so you're able to adapt to the circumstances to better achieve the goal in a positive way. And then empathy, we're all familiar with empathy, right? That's just the ability to consider what other people are feeling, understand what they're feeling, which again is really important as a nurse when you're thinking about the patient's feelings, the family, what they're going through, and then in a leadership capacity as well, that the decisions you are making as a leader are going to affect your staff in some sort of emotional way, whether that's anger, whether it's happiness, they're getting a raise, whatever that is. And then motivation, which is just you're motivated to achieve for the sake of achieving. You want to do well. Okay, I didn't know how to make the stress words appear later, but we all know that these people are demonstrating stress, right? I hope you don't chew on your computers, but whatever gets you through that stressful situation works, right? So this takes it back to that being able to perceive emotions, looking at somebody else and knowing what they're feeling. See, it disappeared the opposite way, sorry. So this is going to lead us into stress, which is basically just the uncomfortable gap between the way your life is going and the way you wish it were going. It's the consequence or response from a stimulus that's placed in your path, in your life. And we all know that not all stress is bad. Some stress is good. It's called eustress, and it is what helps us in a challenging way to become better. And we know that nursing is a stressful career choice sometimes, right? Our environment can cause stressors. There's fewer and fewer nurses. We know that the predicament we're in is a nursing shortage. A lot of that is because of the baby boomer population that's continuing to retire. And then as those baby boomers are getting older, they have more complex illnesses, more comorbidities. So we're dealing with more critically ill patients with fewer of us. So what can we do to make those stressors in our nursing profession better? We can improve our stress management skills. And to do that, we need to develop what's called stress hardiness. It's just the ability to endure difficult situations, being able to manage your stress, process it, deal with it in a positive way. There's 3 attitudes that kind of go along with stress hardiness, and that's commitment, control, and challenge. So you are kind of accepting this stressor as a challenge. You're committed to making a positive change out of it. And this is just taking something that could go down a really bad path with bad outcomes, and you're making it into an opportunity for personal and professional growth. Stress hardiness is essential when looking at safe, high-quality patient care, and I think this is as a nursing standpoint. You need to be able to take stress well, manage it well, process it well for you to deliver safe, effective patient care. Because if you aren't handling it well, then that's going to directly outcome on your patients, right? And then staff recruitment and retention is more, I think, from a leadership or managerial standpoint. If you can't manage stress well as a manager, then your staff is going to see that. They're not going to want to work with you. You need to have good ways of using that, and then, like we talked about before, utilizing emotional intelligence with them too. And this is, again, something we develop over time in our careers, stress hardiness. We can do that by improving stress management strategies, adaptive coping measures, healthy communication, which I know you guys have had lots of experience talking about in this class, and problem-solving skills. And when looking at this, we're going to talk specifically about stress and time management. Okay, so job stress is something that inevitably we're all going to experience at some point, right? It's just the physical and emotional responses to stressors in our job that arise when there's mismatch of abilities. So this kind of reminds me of last week when we talked about role transition, when we have role discrepancy. So that's the realization that you expected something different than the job, or the job expects something different from you, which leads to work-related stress, which is poor physical and emotional health or injury. So looking at jobs, though, there are positives to stress. That's the eustress. So that's the challenges within the job that make us better. So we're better able to excel in our field. We're learning new skills, managing new situations, because we're able to manage our stress and becoming experts as a nurse. Then the opposite of that would be job distress, and this is like physical symptoms of stress, such as fatigue and exhaustion, and then emotional as well, which is feelings of inadequacy or failure, which these things combined can lead to nurse burnout, which I'm sure you guys have heard of that term as well. There's 2 types of job-related stressors. These are external and internal. External, is working conditions. So maybe nurse-to-patient ratios, things like that cause stress to you as the nurse. Then internal is worker characteristics, so personal triggers that you have that make you personally stressed. And so I want to write those two up on the board. I want each of you to think of a job-related stressor that might affect you as a nurse. I'm gonna pick someone with the marker. And then you guys, I want you to categorize them as external or internal. We just toss it, or someone want to go for it? Toss it? I would hit somebody. I'm going to go in. So just pick a stressor that you think, maybe you've experienced it before in your jobs that you guys have now, or it's something that you anticipate to experience as a nurse. And then you just get to pick. We're just going to keep going. You guys are doing good. Can anyone think of more internal things that would cause stress to you, like personally, while at work? Maybe something that happened to you that you can't not think about, so it's constantly causing stress. That's a good one. I know, and I didn't see another one. Okay, I'll take it. You guys did real good. So when thinking about internal, these can be things just, really personal too. Like maybe it's good stress, like you're getting married, or you're planning a really extravagant vacation after nursing school, right? So, or things such as, maybe there's a death in the family, or you got an fender bender on the way to work. So these are just anything that comes across in your personal life that's going to throw a wrench in your day and cause stress. And then these are really good examples that you guys came up with external, so your working conditions. One that your book pointed out was role stress, which I think is important to talk about with you guys, especially because you will be entering the workforce as new nurses really soon. So this is defined as the incongruence between perceived role expectations and achievement. So they classify this as a very acute thing for new grads because you're in a new environment, you're doing new skills, new tasks, learning how to be organized, and so this can cause a lot of stress on you. So understanding how to manage those stressful situations and then manage your time is going to help you hopefully avoid role stress. And then understanding your personal triggers as far as what causes internal stress for you and how to manage those. These are 3 of the theories that are really important to self-management. I know you guys are very familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I assume, kind of. So that's from the bottom up, looking at your psychological needs, your safety needs, feelings of belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization. So not all of these have to be present or necessarily in that order, but they are needed for you to feel secure in your job. That's something that we need from our jobs, right? Job security, along with an environment that recognizes performance so that you feel empowered to do a good job at your job. Along with wages that are sufficient to provide what you need, providing for your family, food, gas, your rent. And so when those things are missing from the environment is when stressful situations come into play that motivate nurses. And then general adaptation syndrome, this is the physical response to stress that we feel. And I have another slide that we're going to kind of walk through a stressful situation with that. That's the fight or flight response that you guys I know have talked about probably too. And that's caused by change, lack of control in your environment, or maybe excessive workload. And then the last one is the Pareto principle. It's also called the 80-20 rule. He did research in Italy, and his study basically looked at the financials and the wealth in Italy, and he came up with that 80% of the wealth was controlled by 20% of the population, and then through his research and dissemination figured out that that can be applied to a lot of other things too, this 80-20 rule, including healthcare. Some of the examples that were given were that like 80% of personnel problems come from 20% of the staff, or 80% of your patient cares for the day are going to come from 20% of your actual patients. So that's important to look at when considering how to manage your stress, is that 80-20 rule. Then this is the fight or flight, or the general adaptation syndrome. So a stressor is introduced to you. So let's say you get to class and Tanya tells you, oh, I forgot to put something on the syllabus. We're actually having a test in 2 days.
Would I do that? I would hope.
Sorry, right? So at that point, your adrenaline shoots, right? And then you're like, oh no. And then you're going to start to feel some emotions, right? Whether that's shock, numbness, not good, maybe anger. And then the next thing that happens is a cognitive response. So you're either thinking positively about this stressor or negatively. I'm going to go with negative in this situation. So then you have physical responses, which might even come sooner. So you have maybe an increased blood pressure and increased heart rate. Maybe you're sweaty. And you're probably not going to sleep so hot for the next couple nights, is my guess. And then at that point, either the stressor is eliminated, or you as a person decide to cope with what's happening, or maybe there's just no change. And then in the end, the result is either adaptation or burnout. And that comes directly from your book if you guys want to look at that anymore. So looking at how we can manage stress, ways to help us do that. The first thing we can do is start with prevention. Like I talked about, know what personally stresses you out and know those triggers and how you best react to them. Balancing your work and your leisure, your work and your play. Having a good social support. I think it's important to have those people at work that you socialize with, that you talk about work-related things with, but it's also really important to have a social support outside of work, that you're not always talking about work. You know, your family, your friends that don't work with you. Determining and managing your sources of stress, and know your limits. This is something I think that'll take some time for you guys as new graduates, you know, knowing how many shifts in a row is okay for you before you start to feel stressed out. How many hours in a day? And how many days do you need between shifts or between a stretch? And that's just something that you will figure out once you're on the job. Same thing kind of goes with being comfortable saying no. I remember as a new grad, I didn't really feel like I could do that. If I felt obligated to say yes because I was the newbie, I had a lot of things to learn. So there's some important things we'll talk about coming up. with how to say no and maybe things you can do so that you can say yes. But again, that's something I think you'll develop a comfortability with as you practice as a nurse. And then things that are going to help just manage everything as a whole is healthy lifestyle choices. So adequate sleep, a good diet, exercise, avoiding things like smoking and alcohol, and having that good support system, which I'm sure half of those things are missing right now, right, as you're in nursing school? You all sleeping just fine, eating, exercising? So coping with stress, I put this little statistic up here that your book mentioned. So it said if work is more than 60% of your awake time, or if self-time is less than 10% of awake time, then your stress levels are bound to increase. And so this kind of goes back to knowing how to balance your work and your leisure. We have some coping strategies here. Decrease your work hours if you can. You know, a lot of the times there's a minimum that you have to work, but if you can. Managing your amount of caffeine. How many of you are super good about that? Not having caffeine? I'm not very good at that either. But having the positive social support, which again, outside of work, but it's also good to have those people you can talk to at work. A belief system, humor, and self-reflection, which I think is really important as a nurse. You're constantly going back and reflecting over your day, your shift. Maybe you can look back on those stressful situations and think and analyze it. How could I have done that better? How could I have managed my stress better to better allocate my day or made that situation better? A really common source of stress is unrealistic expectations. So expecting too much of yourself, maybe. And a good way to change this is what they call reframing. And to me, this is really just a mind over matter thing. You just choose to look at it in a different light. Choose to look at it in a positive way, and look at it in a different perspective. So down here I put some cute little graphics of things that people might use to reduce their stress. Puppies, working out, listening to music. So last week I asked you guys to either think of things or bring things that you use to relieve your stress. Are you ready for show and tell? Okay, who wants to start?
I didn't bring anything, but I always work out when I'm really stressed. I go for a run every day.
It's a good one.
So I was going to rely on break as a way to relieve stress, but that's probably not going to happen. So instead, I often use aromatherapy with like essential oils.
Yeah.
I've got a bracelet that helps a little bit.
Any little bit helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever I'm super stressed, I clean.
You clean?
How stressed are you right now?
Right? I'm really stressed. I could use someone to clean my house. Come on over. What else? Someone said music.
I read.
Read. Take your mind off everything.
You
You write it down. I love it.
I like
Puzzles.
but I also have a problem with cooking like an entire meal when I'm super stressed and doing stuff.
Right, so you kind of procrastinate into cooking. Like my house gets really clean when I have things to do for school. I'm the same way. Anything else?
I take a nap. I don't know if that's good stress relief, but I pretend it doesn't exist.
Really takes your mind off everything. Do you wake up feeling more stressed or less stressed?
Yeah, it doesn't get any better, but
It makes me take another nap.
Right. Okay, well, good. Those are awesome. And you know, one thing that works for someone's not always going to work for everybody else, but it is good, I think, to try other stress management techniques. I like to Netflix and chill, just, or, you know, binge eat awful snacks while I Netflix and chill. So again, not really those healthy lifestyle choices that are supposed to help with our stress, but, so the next thing we're going to talk about is burnout, which is what happens to nurses that are in emotional and physical exhaustion. So this can happen from unrelenting workload without relief. It can exist from things that are in the environment, so those external things we kind of talk about, or it can be the individual, so maybe internal things, and maybe it's a combination of both, that interaction between that and how the stress is being perceived and managed with that individual. Nurses who are experiencing burnout feel that they've exhausted all of their resources, they're so depleted that their actual well-being is at risk. Some of the things you might see of someone that's experiencing burnout are the physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. They're really just checked out. They're on autopilot. They're not actively engaged in their job with their coworkers, with their patients. And they have a decreased sense of professional accomplishment and competence. So looking at how we can avoid burnout, we look at our self-efficacy, which is the belief in your capability to organize and execute goal-oriented activities. And Albert Bandura is the theorist who kind of introduces this concept of self-efficacy. And the things that contribute to your sense of self-efficacy are verbal persuasion or encouragement. Then maybe you've mastered a similar task to the thing that you're looking at now. So that's some encouragement. You know, I've done something similar like this, I can do this. Observing or watching others, that always increases your self-efficacy. You've watched it, now you can do it. And then emotional reaction. So keeping stress in check is another thing that we can do to make sure that our energies are put where they can benefit. So we can ask ourselves, is this stressor or is this event or situation important? Yes or no? Does this stressor affect me personally or my unit? Yes or no? And can I change this situation? There's all those change quotes out there on focus on the things you can change, because when you can't change things, you can't change it. That's not the quote, but so being able to identify what stressful situations basically are positive for you to put your energies into, because otherwise you won't be able to focus on the stressful situations that are important within your control, within your domain, that are able to be changed. So don't expend your energy on things that you can't. And one of the really good things we can do to manage stress is manage our time. It's one of our most valuable resources. It's defined as the appropriate use of tools, techniques, and principles to control the time spent on low priority things so that you do have time for the high priority things. When looking at how to allocate your time, we kind of have two choices. We either can organize or you can go with the flow. And I'm sure immediately you guys can kind of put yourselves into which one you tend to do maybe. So where does our time go during a shift? Where is it going? Are we doing too much? So learning how to prioritize your tasks at the beginning of the day is really important. The inability to say no, which is something we kind of talked about. You know, you eventually will get comfortable with it being able to say, no, I've got enough going on right now. I don't think I can help with that. But in case it's something, you know, you're a new nurse on the floor and someone says, hey, I'm going to go put an NG in this patient. That's something you haven't done before, so you want to be able to do that because that's going to benefit you, right? Learning how to delegate maybe something else that's on your plate that's low priority that maybe your CNA can help with, or another nurse that's not as busy could help with. So learning how to delegate so that you can say yes to important things, but then it is important to be able to say no when you know you're just up to here with things to do. Procrastination. Are any of you procrastinators? Yeah, I was really good at that in nursing school too. Still a little bit, but much better. So when thinking about procrastination, understanding the reason why you're procrastinating is really important. Is it, besides the fact that you just don't want to do it, but is it difficult? Maybe you don't understand it, so therefore you're procrastinating. I like to motivate myself. So if I have an assignment that I have been not looking forward to, that I don't want to do, I just like give myself a little pep talk. I'm like, I'm going to go to Sonic, and I'm going to get a drink, and some tater tots, and then I'm going to go home, and I'm just going to get it done. That way I can reward myself with Netflix later. That's my process. Looking at being disorganized, and when we talk about disorganization, it's really the process of organization, not specifically like oh, I forgot to put that on my calendar. So not like the tool that you're using to stay organized. Complaining. Any complainers? I'll own it. Venting, you know, do you always find yourself walking up to someone, you're like, God, I just need to vent again. And you're in there for 20 minutes. So, or more. So when you think about complaining, I know it is important to vent when you have a situation that it does help. But also being aware that the time spent complaining, you know, sometimes you could have done the task 3 different times over in the amount of time it took you to complain. And then looking at possible solutions for whatever task you were tasked with. If it is something that's really bothering you, maybe it's a problem with a coworker or a task that you just have an issue with, and maybe problem solve and think about ways that there could be possible solutions and then act on it so that you're not complaining tomorrow. Perfectionism, any of those? Perfectionists? So they have perfectionism here as a big time waster because you find yourself never completing tasks fully because it's not perfect. And so then it's very hard to get things done because you're just, it's never perfect. And so it's a hard thing, I think, to overcome, but it is something that we can work on so that we can complete our tasks in a timely manner. And then interruptions. I think this one is a really good one to talk about because, I mean, what do nurses have clipped to their collar at work? Voceras. Interruptions are a part of our jobs as nurses. It's expected, it's anticipated, it's inevitable, but somewhat controllable in the way that we handle them. So the concept that they have here is called doing it now. So when you get to work and you're getting organized, just start on your tasks. It's called doing it now. So you're doing it because you're expecting interruptions later. You know dietary is going to call you to ask if your patient can have their tray, and then you're like, oh, I need a glucose. So you have to stop what you're doing to go do that. PT, OT, wanting to work with your patient, maybe new meds coming up for your patient. So being able to do your tasks right away so that you can have time for the interruptions. And then, so I'm going to ask you guys to share ways that you manage your time, maybe as nursing students or when you're out on the floor doing clinicals. What do you guys do to effectively manage your time?
Write a schedule out.
A list? Anyone else the queen of sticky notes? King or queen of sticky notes? That was me too. Anything else? Have you guys seen nurses use anything specific to really help allocate their 12-hour shift?
I like the OB unit thing.
Trying to write your meds down, the interventions you have to do, making sure you have the charting out by a certain day.
Awesome. Yes. This table is right out of your book, but I liked it because it talks about some different techniques for time management. Looking at organization, which is something you can do at the very beginning of your shift. You're organizing your day, looking at your patient load, setting your priorities. Who's your sickest patient? Who has the most meds? So you're not only organizing things and tasks, but also people. Those interruptions we know that we're going to have. Focus on your goals for the day, and then tool usage, which, like you guys said, can be your lists, your hour-by-hour checklists, and a time management plan. So when I was on the floor, I kind of used that hour-by-hour plan. And so when I'm going to pass these out. This was an S-bar sheet that I adapted to make it better for me. And so I'll hand this out and then we'll talk about it. And when you guys, let me know if you need more down here, are making those goals for the day, it's really important to make sure that they are realistic and achievable. Oh gosh, I hope I made enough. I think there might be an extra one and we might have to pass this way. But making sure they're realistic and achievable. That way you can at least get through your day and have some goals that were done. It's really important for each nurse to devise a method for tracking care of your patients, organizing time, and also monitoring those items that you delegate. Because, right, you are still the RN. You are still the person that's responsible. So being able to track the cares that other people are providing for your patient. So the front of this is really probably very similar to what you guys have seen, maybe. I think I added more diagnoses on here just to make it easier to circle through a report. But one thing that I would do is start with black ink at the beginning of my shift when I was getting a report. So everything from the previous shift was in black. And then anything throughout the day, I chose a color, so blue. Then if my patient's PT/OT was ordered, I would circle that. Maybe their diet advanced, or we ended up putting them on fall precautions, or new sets of labs came in. Or the IV went bad, I started a new one. So it was really easy for me if a provider had a question for me to look at my day and know what I had done personally. And then on the back is kind of like you guys had talked about, it's that hour by hour throughout my shift. So I would start at the beginning of the day. Most patients have 8 a.m. meds, so I wasn't writing down every single 8 a.m. med, but if patients had scheduled meds, I would write those down in this notes section so that I wouldn't forget to go and give that. When we talk about looking at and monitoring the things that you delegate, the things that your CNA is helping you with, that kind of is over here, the vital signs. So maybe I noticed that, oh, my 11 o'clock vitals aren't done. Maybe she's really swamped and I need to help. So that is reminding me that I should have looked what their vitals were. If I asked a pain assessment, if I checked a glucose, those were things that were all written down here. If an intervention was ordered and I implemented it, I make sure I wrote it down on the notes. Then down here was any new orders that came in through the day, and INO, which a lot of your nurses' aides are helping you with too. But I mean, how many times are you guys in the room and you end up emptying a hat or filling up a water? So it was always important to keep track of that too, and also make sure it's matching up with what your PCT or CNA is doing as well. And then there's these little notes on there to make sure that I did my acuities, my outcomes. Those little, I think they call them clickies. Do they still call them that? Maybe not. We call them clickies. To make sure that you had those assessments done by the end of your shift. And you guys will find whatever's gonna work for you once you're out in the workforce. That's gonna help you. But these were my, I think they call them brains for a reason. Because I was able to easily look at what had happened during my shift. And especially if it was the same nurse coming back on at the end of the day, all I had to do was tell her the things in blue. Because why go through an entire thing again when she usually would save her paper. So, and it was really easy to tell when I'd given maybe the last pain medication. If they were Q2 turns, that was something that I had on here every 2 hours highlighted so that I wouldn't forget to do. Or endotool, if you have a patient on endotool, that was really important as well. So then I'm gonna see if I can take you guys to this website. I think maybe. This website is really just a good article on time management. It's a lot of the things we talked about, but this Nurse Buff also has nursing career guides, practice NCLEX questions. It's just kind of a good resource for you. So she talks about arriving early to your shift so that you can get mentally ready for your day. I was always there like 45 minutes before, but that's just me because I wanted to sit down and look at everything and be sure I was ready.
Won't let you clock in that early.
No, they won't. It's on your own time. Set priorities, which we talked about. Estimate how long it's going to take you to do a task. If you're walking into a MRSA room to do a Q2 turn, you know, you might be in there for quite a while. So making sure you didn't have something else that needed done before that. Or again, delegating. Avoid tasks that aren't on your to-do list. We talked about this one, learning to say no. Someone had put up here limited breaks. So making sure that you are taking a break. How many times do you hear that a nurse didn't have time to eat or go to the bathroom on their shift? So making sure that you do take that time. It's not very much time out of your shift. Maybe asking someone to cover for you real quick, you just need 10 minutes. So that's important for your mental health as well. Being flexible, being organized. You guys have talked about your sticky notes, your lists. Those are really good things too. Knowing how to delegate and don't take things too hard. So this was just, again, a really cool website if you guys wanted to look around on that. And so now I have to log into that. That Pull Everywhere app that you guys have, you guys want to get that out on your phones. It's just, I want to kind of review some of the definitions that we talked about today. So there's going to be a 5-question thing and then one of those little word clouds. Oh. And then I just hit share, Tanya.
I think so. Oh, it's like that every time.
I know. I had my husband do it last night and it worked, so I'm hoping it works for you guys. Do they have to link with me somehow?
Yes.
So we're gonna share. Do they have to go to that? I know, I wonder if they have to get like a link or something from me.
There's like someone that will come up with a text
Yeah,
that we can text.
yeah, here
There
we
you
go.
Oh.
So, yeah, they're gonna text this in the message at this number.
Okay.
That's the number, and then that's the message.
And then I can
once-
just click next through my things.
Uh-huh,
Okay,
then you
got
should
it.
be able to do all that.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then you should just be able to arrow for your next one.
Okay. And then it'll show up there.
I think so. It should just like pull, yeah, like, yeah. So one person, oh, 3 people. So we have more people choosing that one than that one, right?
Okay.
What's the question?
Also, you guys can change your answers. I didn't know that. Doing good, doing good. Yes, that one is emotional intelligence. So then we're looking at this definition, which is the ability to detect and decipher emotions in faces, pictures, voices, and cultural artifacts, including your own. You guys get them all in there? Yeah? Yes, it's perceiving emotions. So looking at what stress hardiness is essential for. Pretty divided. Are we locked in yet? It is both A and B. So it's essential for safe, high-quality patient care, I think, when looking at a nursing kind of standpoint, and then from a leadership and managerial standpoint, it's important for staff recruitment and retention. Looking at which classification of stress is a fender bender on the way to work. It would be internal. It's a personal thing that's going to affect your day. Then looking at this one, inadequate staffing is classified as which source? Did you all get that? One's external. Good job. Then what is your belief in your capability to organize and execute goal-oriented activities? Self-efficacy. And then I think I just have, ooh, this is the bubble of words. So what are some effective ways to cope with stress? Can be ways we talked about, things that you guys do personally. Dog. I wish exercise were my way of stress relief. Mine's the opposite.
Mine is not.
No.
It used to be when I was young, and now I'm just old and lazy.
Aromatherapy, talking, journaling, that's a good one.
Oh, I thought that's it. Pizza. It says puzzle.
Pizza's a good one.
I can't see that far either, so.
Oh, so you guys can send emojis in too? Oh, that's cool. Yes, why did no one bring wine? Just kidding.
Cross my
We just didn't want to be rude and drinking,
I appreciate it. Thank you. It was very considerate.
She's got her bottle of wine waiting at home for her
Right?
after baby comes.
Anyone wants to know what I want for Christmas?
When is your due date?
The 13th. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for letting me talk with you guys today. You did great. I appreciate your enthusiasm.
December 13th.